Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Rants show. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the term girl math. Girl math is a very common term, but I don't think it's necessarily encapsulating of enough people. Girl math is for girls. I don't mean to be sexist. I don't want to get canceled, but typically people would associate girls with girl math. But I want to talk about consumer math, more specifically, credit card consumer math. Basically, and this is genius, by the way. I love the credit card companies. Like, the credit card companies are like the perfect representation of America because they can charge 30% interest and then give you 2% cash back, and people will be foaming at the mouth to just max them out. You know, this is how it works. This is how it works. You graduate from high school, you go to community college, you go to a four-year university, you go to out of state university, and on the campus, there is going to be a booth with some motherfucker, some guy or girl, just some motherfucker sitting, and they're going to ask you if you want to open up your first credit card. Now, they are not doing this to help you. They are doing this because it is cheaper for them to set up that booth and to pay some guy to sit out there all day for a week than it is to advertise on social media, advertise on TV. It's just cheaper to go straight to the source for your customers, you know? So they will approach you, or you'll approach them, I guess. They don't approach you. They're not going to do that. But they're going to ask you if you want your first credit card. They're going to sign you up, probably going to be like a $500, credit limit on it. And they're going to get you used to spending that. And, credit cards are great because you spend $5,000 and then at the end of the month, you only have to pay $40. No, that's not how it works. That is the genius behind the credit card plan. I have a feeling that credit cards would not work if we taught about them in schools. Like how when you're taking driver's ed, they show you like the videos of like the drunk driving or like making sure your kid's buckled up or like don't leave your kid in the hot car. Kind of like that. There needs to be like a scared straight version for credit cards. But I don't think there ever will be because there's so much money in this. There's so much money in this. It's an unbelievable amount of money that these credit card companies make from people who just don't know any better. And some of them do. Some of them do know better and they just don't care. Which, I'm not going to sit here and say that the credit card companies are like completely evil. I don't think they're great. But at the end of the day, they are a business. Are they selling to a large majority of their customers are just completely ignorant to the fact that they're selling their souls away? Yes, they are doing that, willingly doing that. But it's a business. It's a business. Now, I don't want to be killed for this. I understand that people are, it's hard times right now. Very, very hard times right now. And people are using credit cards to survive. But there are other ways. There are other ways. You don't need, because the credit card debt it's designed to be inescapable. That's how it's designed. They lure you in with the rewards and everything. And then you're stuck. If you fall for the bait, you get trapped for life. Or it's very, very hard to get out. It's easier to just roll over and take it, which is very unfortunate. But basically what I'm saying is go down to Amex, open up the Platinum card, pay the $900 monthly fee, and max that shit out. Don't pay it off. Go to Greece. Go to Italy. Go live your life, have all these experiences, and then spend the rest of your life paying off a 2-week trip to Europe. That is consumer math. And I think that's beautiful. You know, when I was younger, I used to wonder like why the government doesn't do anything about like these corporations. But now I get it. It is truly like they work so hard to bioengineer food. Giant carrots, giant apples, giant pumpkins. They work so hard to chemically and biologically engineer these products. They have, over the course of like the last century, perfectly bioengineered the perfect consumer. And that is where the money is. You know, that's where the money is. I don't want to go all like QAnon. I don't want to go all like conspiracy theorists on you, but people are less likely to care about what's happening in the country, what's happening in the world when they're happy. When they're happy, you know, people who are just happy, they have the products they want, they have the nicest car, they have the newest iPhone. They're less likely to care about the government, you know, taking over some smaller country or, you know, something like that. Like, you know, think about how everyone was so happy in like the 80s, like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I know we had the Korean War, we had Vietnam, and we had some other stuff here at home, but for the most part, things were good. Things were good. Houses were cheap. Cars were cheap. You know, the average person could buy all these things. You had movies coming out. You had all these different cultural things happening. And the CIA was up to no good. And no one gave a shit. No one gave a shit. No one's going to call out the CIA. No one's going to call out the NSA. No one's going to call out the rest of the federal government when shit is good. Shit is good. You know, like, think about all the protests happening today. You know, think about all the protests happening today. Think about all the struggles people are today. Less of that would be happening if homes were cheaper. Less of that would be happening if iced coffee was cheaper. You're taking coffee and you're adding ice to it. How is this $8? But if that iced coffee was $1.50, no one would protest. People wouldn't care. People wouldn't care that we're getting involved in the Middle East or we're, you know, tariffs with China, or we're kidnapping other countries' presidents. No one would care. No one would care. Truly, no one would care. You know, if people could just sit at home and, you know, work 4 days a week and play Xbox on the weekends, no one would care that the government is like mind controlling people and controlling the weather and tunnels of children under the ground and all this other shit that people think about. Which is insane. You know, I tend to enjoy my life. When I get off work, I'll have a beer. On the weekend, I'll play video games. I'll, you know, go hang out with friends. The last thing I think about doing is looking for tunnels with like children being held hostage, or like, you know, trying to find like where COVID started. I don't care. And you shouldn't either. And this is exactly why credit cards are so great. Credit cards are like a Band-Aid on the American problem. And that's fine because the Band-Aid's working for now. It's working for now. Might not work forever, but it's working for now. That's all that could be said about that. You know, credit cards are great. You should spend money you don't have. You should. If you take one thing away from this, you should just know that your government loves you. Your government considers you a human being, and you should spend money you don't have. Thank you for listening, and I will see you tomorrow.